All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Great. I think we can get started. Welcome for those of you who have joined us. This webinar is focused on annual planning that increases sales. My name is Bill Fotsch, President of Open Book Coaching. I'm going to kind of dive right into this. I know everybody just came off of Thanksgiving. You probably have too much to do, so I'm going to get kind of right to the meat and potatoes. And we will have some time at the end of what should be about a 25, 30-minute session to address any questions that you have, so feel free to jump in on this. The focus on this is going to be these 4 bullet points: how to build your plan with sound customer and competitive intelligence. I'll lay that out. How to strengthen relationship with existing customers to increase repeat business. How to increase referrals from existing customers in a very similar process. I'll explain what that means. How to get your employees engaged and more customer-centric to increase employee effectiveness with existing and referral customers. As we're doing this, the ways you can participate, I want to in particular get you thinking about what actions can you take as a function of this. How can you make more money? How can you increase sales? So if you would, keep thinking along those lines. You want to make some notes as we go. Feel free to do that, because I'm going to kind of challenge you to come up with what are the things that you can do to make more money out of this. And we will send this PowerPoint to you, so you're free to make any notes, but we're going to provide those notes to you. And we've decided to make kind of a special offer. The first person today who sends an email to me after the webinar is completed will get a free planning support, and I'll explain kind of the typical planning support that we provide, but just a kind of a complimentary gift to those folks who are attending today's webinar. But this is a first come, first serve kind of deal. A little background on me. I came from the Milwaukee area, engineer at Briggs & Stratton, went to Boston Business School, 5 years at Bain & Company, kind of corporate America guy. And in 1993, so roughly 20 years ago, I started coaching companies. My focus is how companies improve their results and the lives of their employees who drive those results by applying common sense kinds of management techniques, primarily in the vicinity or in the domain of open book kind of principles. Typically, my compensation is tied to company results, so I'm more than casually interested in how companies are doing. I'll give you just a few examples of companies that I've worked with. This is a company I worked with some time ago, Universal Engineering. They do environmental testing. Had the privilege of starting to do work with them in 2002. This is their profits, at least in the next several years, and the company's valuation. They actually moved into kind of a shadow stock program that I also helped them with. Boardman, and we'll be going through a little case study with them, but Boardman is a company who the blue line is what their job margin dollars per month were in a prior year. That was 2011. Here was the budget they set for 2012, and here's their actual results for 2012. So they've done, pretty well. And that job margin, you can think of it, it's approximately gross margin. That jump in job margin dollars represents a tenfold increase in their profits. If you then look at another company, this is a company in the remodeling industry. They are Anthony Wilder Design. Think about this for a second. I've had the privilege of working with these guys since 2006. They were recognized by the Wall Street Journal as one of the Wall Street Journal's top employers. What kind of a year do you think it was for most folks in the remodeling industry in 2009? I mention that because that focus on how to generate more revenue was in particular a topic that has been something I've been working with companies about a lot since 2009, when the economy kind of tanked. And most everybody I was working with had some real challenges as it related to additional revenue. So especially given my compensation is tied to their success, anything that we can do to drive more revenue was more than of casual interest to me. The case study that I want to walk you through is Boardman. Let me just say that it all begins with planning from my perspective. And planning, this is a template I've used with a lot of companies over time, starts with getting information. So you'd see the employee survey, senior management interviews, financial analysis, customer market data. And then typically, at least when we're starting the open book thing, some orientation for the group as to what that's all about and establishing what winning means. That's really the initial platform. Getting the input, at least when we're helping companies, there's an employee survey tool that we use. It's an online instrument, which affords sort of obvious confidentiality. I found the more obvious you make the candor and confidentiality of the survey, the higher the level of confidence and candor you get from the employees. The same is true with the online senior management interview. The financial analysis is a template that we've been using for some period of time, looking at trends, debt, cash flow, those kinds of standard analyses, and in particular in those companies that have established budgets, budget variances versus the last year. So we get a view of what the financials are telling us. The customer and market data, that's something that I want to spend a little bit of additional time on with you because, frankly, for most companies that I work with, the amount of customer or market data they have is pretty weak. And most of the companies, there have been some larger companies, Southwest Airlines, Capital One, Harley-Davidson, that I've worked with. But most of the companies I work with are small to medium-sized companies, typically privately held. And most of those folks I find have relatively little market data. Here's the tool. I'm going to spend a moment on this that I've been using with more and more customers. I'm giving you the current version of it. We've been refining it over time. But when I mentioned that in 2009, a lot of the companies I was working with were having trouble generating enough revenue, this particular customer interview script, which is really a refined version of Fred Reicheld's Ultimate Question. If you're familiar with Fred Reicheld from Bain & Company, he's the guy who sort of developed the Net Promoter Score. Because what he found is customers who are more loyal generate more profits for the company. So anything you do to increase your relationship, your loyalty with customers, it happens to be true with employees also, is very powerful. The script, as you can see here, and this is pretty much the tool, is you jot down the customer's name, who's the contact you're speaking with, the date, and the contact phone number. Then the script actually starts with, thank you for the opportunity to work with you. We're continually looking to improve our business. To that end, we'd like to get your input and advice. Let me stop right there. Think personally. If someone asks you for input or advice on something that's important to them, how does that make you feel? Most folks respond pretty positively to that. I mention that because the first versions of this, that isn't how we framed it. Okay, we sort of dove right into the questions. You see it starts with, thank you for the opportunity to work with you. That wasn't the original way this was scripted. But I found someone to mention that, you never thank your customers enough. That seemed like it was pretty smart. And we'll likely continue to refine this. But that's the introductory portion of the script. Then the first question is really pretty simple. Given the work we've done for you in the past, would you be willing to enthusiastically refer us to a friend or colleague? Most of your customers, if you've got a viable business, most of your customers will respond positively to that. But regardless of whether they say yes or no, because it just tees up the second question, why? This is where all the magic is. This is where you're getting closer to your customers. Again, most of them will respond yes, that they would be willing to enthusiastically refer you to a friend or colleague, but then you ask why. And you can see I put in parentheses here, probe for understandings of the operational specifics so you have a good idea of what they really value. Because what you really want to have happen here is, one, you want to do active listening. You want to really understand what it is that they value in terms of the service you provide. Because fundamentally what they're telling you is their purchase criteria. And not all your customers necessarily have the same purchase criteria. But in addition, envision what's happening here. They're reliving what they love about your work. Think for a second. How often do you think most of your customers are thinking about you and your business? Most customers don't think about their suppliers that much unless you screw up. But you don't have to worry at all when you're having this conversation about whether you have their attention, whether they're thinking about you. You have 100% share of mind when you're having this conversation. And I did say conversation. This is not something I would encourage folks to send out in an email. Because the other thing that I find valuable, if you're looking for more work, almost by definition, that means you don't have enough work. And if you don't have enough work, then chances are you've got some volume of employees that aren't as busy as they could otherwise be. That means you've got folks that can do these interviews. Some of you will say, oh yeah, but my guys, they'd never be able to speak with customers on the phone. That's why you give them a script, so they can follow this, because frankly, it's not all that complex. Because not only are you getting closer to your customer, but if you have your employees involved in making these calls, then your employees are also getting closer to your customers. So again, this is the real question, or the real key on this. This is where the relationship starts soaring. And when they say things like, well, you're so professional and you always provide the products on time. You say, great, I'm really glad to hear that. I understand on time. When you say we're so professional, what do you mean by that? Well, you guys come up with some great ideas, and you're always presenting yourself, with the company logo and so forth. I said, okay, I understand presenting myself with the customer logo. When you say great ideas, what do you mean by that? This is what I mean by probing for understanding. So you're really understanding the specifics of what they really value. Once you do that, if you do that, then the third question, do you know anyone who value the same things that you value in our work? That's for the referral question. And frankly, if you do a reasonable job at questions 1 and 2, when you conduct this interview with 10 companies, you should get at least 2 referrals, otherwise known as 20%. And if you're not, then I'd really like to take a look at the notes from your calls. Typically what I found when that's not the case is we're not probing enough right here. Then frankly, and because I'm going to pause there for a second and say the first 3 questions were really the entirety of this survey. About a year ago, I added the 4th question, because I found that so few of the companies that I had really had good competitive intelligence. And the 4th question, as you can see, is who do you see as our competitors and what do you think of as their strengths and weaknesses? Because at the end of the day, your competitors are not who you think that your competitors are. Your competitors are who your customers think are your competitors, because that's the competitive frame. So using these tools, this overall planning approach, okay, and then this tool to really drive understanding of our customers, stronger relationships, developing referrals, and so forth, I'm going to just show you 2 quick case examples of this. One is Boardman, it's the manufacturing company. The other one is Furborn, which is an engineering company. With Boardman, we started with that same planning that I talked about, the employee input, the management input, the financial analysis, past 5 years, and the 2011 budget versus actual variances. The customer insights and competitive insights, which came from the customer outreach work. And then we got into weekly forecasts driving the lessons learned. Okay? I'm going to buzz through this fairly quickly, but suffice it to say that this was the original scoreboard. They figured out that job margin, roughly gross margin dollars, okay, per month, was the right focal point. This is in dark blue where they were in the prior year. This is the budget they set for themselves. So you can see pretty aggressive budget, and you can see this was the first forecast. This is the scoreboard as it looked in the beginning of May. because they're forecasting the beginning of January, because they're forecasting January, February, and March. And part of what's really useful about this, with all of the input they got from their customers, from their employees, from the management and the financials, honing in on the right metric and then forecasting what it's going to be, they automatically move into thinking about cause and effect and what they can do to shape the future. Every week they update this graph. Here is the same company 9 months later. So you can see that at this stage, 5 months later, as of May. So now, here's that budget, okay, which looked like it was going to be pretty hard to meet, but take a look at what our actual results have been. Through May, that's actually, you can see it in April there, we're nominally speaking, I'll go full screen on this, maybe it'll be easier to see, okay? Our budget through April was $2.6 million, and we came in at 3.2. And you can see our actuals are getting a bit closer and closer to our forecasts, which is clearly a good sign. We're getting smarter and smarter about our business, okay? This is how they drove the results. Every week, looking at different ways that they could improve their results in efficiency, improving the market, and that customer outreach that I was telling you about. As of 2012, sales backlog, they're sold out through May of 2013, which for them, a 5-month backlog, is doing pretty well. A record profit for the company. Bonuses that are higher than the last 5 years combined. The average employee got 10 weeks of bonus pay, which represents, nominally speaking, 20% of their compensation. And that's, so the company's doing much better off on profits. The employees are getting some significant pay increases, not in terms of straight salary, but in bonuses. So it's performance comp. Morale is really high, and I can tell you in 2013, the profits are even higher, and it looks like we're going to be in the vicinity of about 14 weeks of pay in 2013. All centered around focus on the customers, understand what they really need. That drives additional revenue, and then we translate that revenue into profits, keeping everybody focused on the margins. So that's a little note on Boardman. I'm now going to take you to a different company, and the way I'm going to do it with Furborn Engineering is actually go to the Excel files so you can see exactly what their scoreboards look like. In their particular case, as you can see here, they're a service company. This is their scoreboard. This was their scoreboard as of January of this year. And part of what I've highlighted in red here is, look what happened in the last 2 months of 2012. We had a budget of $87,000. We were doing pretty well versus our budget, but one of the things that was problematic was we only had 2 customers, and those 2 customers both declined in sales quite a bit at the end of the year. So we were far too concentrated on 2 customers. We got, as a function of that, we got a huge wake-up call. And that wake-up call said, we got to get out, we got to diversify, we got to get more customers. Well, here is the spreadsheet that we created. It is precisely the same script, okay, only this is literally the database that they used to track this. So they dated the survey, who was doing the survey, who was the client, who was the contact name. They wanted to jot down what was the last project that they did. That was more of a reference for them. And then answer the question, would they enthusiastically refer us? Yes. And that's true with the number. I'm going to show you these. Why? Relationships has always worked and efficient. We provide experienced engineers and a history of good work, our close proximity, and good response time. You can see a pretty good operational stuff, okay? Would you value the same thing? Who was valuing the same thing? Coworkers, so this was kind of an internal referral. Wants his team to use us more with this particular customer. Okay, I'm going to move over here for a second and show you on competitors 1, 2, and 3 what input they were getting on competitors. And one other, this is an optional question that they used, and that is, the optional question is, if you have a new service, just ask the folks, are you familiar with the new service? And the new service was stress analysis for pipe plates, vibration, and so forth. So that became another value of the survey, and that is asking folks, were they familiar with it? And if no, would they like more information? As you can see off here to the right, yes, would like more information. In the first 9 calls that they made, they got 8 referrals. And guys, these guys are engineers. They're not known for, you know, their interpersonal skills. But quite frankly, it's not that difficult to do. And they keep adding to this. And I'm going to go right to the punchline on this. We're just closing up this year. And where we had last year, we had 2 major customers and therefore not very diversified, and 42,000 in December and 13,000 in January. By the way, they work on 4-week periods. So each of these, you see the end date is the end date of the period. So this is the 4 weeks that ended January 4th. In any event, look at what it looks like now. And probably as or more important, across 8 major customers. So they've got a considerably more viable, considerably stronger business. Now we're beating our budget, and frankly, the prospects for 2014 look even stronger. And the way they got there, don't get me wrong, they did a lot of hard work, okay? But fundamentally, the driver is right here. That's really what's driving this. So that's what I found to be really effective. And you can see the cross-section between planning and driving sales. When you're having those conversations with your customers, that tends to get you a lot of great market information, but it also strengthens your relationship with your customers, which tees up repeat and referral business. And to the extent that you do that with your employees being the individuals that make those calls, occasionally we've made some calls for companies. Oftentimes it's more to show folks that this works pretty well, because I'm frankly a big fan of having your customer or your own employees do this. Sometimes we coach folks a bit in just guiding them through this process. And then I've highlighted here, that's why I put this up, the power of the weekly forecasts, because that I find it keeps people thinking about cause and effect, where the business is going. So you're clear on each week you seek a better to get a better handle on the underlying drivers of the business. Our numbers move up and down as a function of our efforts, market demand, and competitive moves. So we're getting smarter and smarter about our business. Forecasting can reinforce our strategic learning. That is, our understanding of our capabilities, the customer's needs, and what's going on with the competition. And frankly, strategic planning, just extend this by moving the time frame out a bit. So I'm going to pause there for a second and ask if you have any questions. And I'll be kind of quiet for just a bit here, because part of what I'd like you to do is think in terms of action plans. What can you do with the things that we've just discussed? Or what questions do you have that might help you develop your thoughts in terms of actions? And Michael, are you fielding questions?
Yes, I am. And one of the questions that just came in, Bill, is they look at this and there's a little, the question said, but I'm a little bit worried that I'm imposing on my customers when I do this interview process.
I understand. You know, quite frankly, you can have these conversations in a way, and part of what I would say is I appreciate the concern, because the last thing you want to do is impose on your customer, okay? But I'll go right back to the script. Two things. One, hopefully you're having some volume of conversations with your customers. And it can be, some companies we're working with are doing this, in the context of the conversations you're already having with your customers, say, hey, you know, really appreciate doing work with you. We're continually looking to improve our business. To that end, we've got 3 quick questions for you. Would just like to get your input or advice on. Do you have time to do that? If they say no, then could we find a time? Most folks will respond yes to that. And the good news about this, this script is, frankly, it can be, you know, 5 or 10 minutes.
Now
so ideally, especially, I'm sorry, let me just finish the thought. Especially if you're looking, and hopefully this would be true, if you're looking to improve your business, that should be good news for your customers. So I would think that they would respond positively to that, would have potentially kind of a vested interest in you getting better, because that inevitably means that your service to them is getting better.
Another question, Bill, that came in had to do with, you know, it's December already. Is there time to really do this planning right now?
Well, I guess the comment I would make there is twofold. If you've done planning and you don't have good customer or competitive data, then I'd question the quality of that plan. That may not be very kind, but you know, I'm a coach. I'm not here to be loved. So I'm just being straight with you. The other thing that's true is, frankly, this is the kind of thing, this element. I mean, I'm a big fan of doing those things, and you know what? You're right. It is December, okay? So, I mean, if you've already got your plans done for this year, and let's say you've done them really well, then great, okay? There's lots of folks I know are, you know, kind of struggling to find time to do any type of planning. But the other side of that is, frankly, in particular, the reaching out to your customers with this customer interview. We've done that at year end. We've done that middle of the year. It's like, when would you like to have more repeat and referral customers? So it can be done just, so it's clear, when I originally started using this, it was not for planning purposes. That was not the intent. The intent was to find ways to improve sales. It ended up improving repeat referral sales because it was 2009 and everybody I was working with was so desperate on sales. It just so happens that if you do this, the likelihood that you're going to get great market data that can improve your planning. So let's say you're done with your planning for this year. If you're done with your planning for this year, great, okay. Then I'd say, are you interested in some more repeat and referral revenue? And if the answer to that is yes, then I'd encourage you to do this, and you do it over the course of the next year. Hopefully you see the increase in repeat and referral revenue, and then you've got additional customer and competitive data as you're walking into planning for next year. But I'm guessing that there's a fair number of folks that may be on the phone that haven't got their plans all locked and loaded for next year.
Let's see, I'm reviewing the feedback that we're getting here, Bill. One of the things that is coming across is this something that I can do myself?
Absolutely. Unequivocally. Matter of fact, one of the things that I would tell you is we originally were thinking about this being a service, that we make the calls for companies, and we'll do that. Okay, when we do that, we typically are doing it to show folks this actually really works. But I'm a huge fan of getting this done using your own staff. It may be, because anything new tends to be a little bit daunting, it may be, as has been the case for a number of companies, that having a coach like us sort of guide you through this, kind of get you started, may be useful. But the vast majority of companies that I work with, I just get them started on this, and then oftentimes what we do is once we've kind of reviewed the background, who would we focus on, tee up X number of employees that are going to make Y number of calls, and then review the notes from the calls. I was just with a company in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago where they just completed a dozen calls. We looked at the notes from those calls, similar to the spreadsheet that I showed you with Furborn Engineering. I could see some things that were working well. I could see some things that they could kind of refine. But there is, I'm a big fan of folks doing this largely on their own. And frankly, for what it's worth, we're in the script that we're going to send to folks, we're going to give this to you. If it turns out you're the individual who wins the free appraisal, we'll guide you through this whole process, including the employee survey and the management questionnaire, and it will cost you nothing, and because we just decided to do that. But fundamentally, the answer, I guess it was long-winded on that, Michael, is yes, I strongly encourage folks to do this on their own.
All right. I think that's all the questions we've got so far, Bill.
Well, good. For the moment, I think that works really well. I'd like to say thank everybody for their interest, and Michael, as always, for your support. We'll get the presentation off to everyone, so you'll have that, and we'll let you know who won the free appraisal, and that we'll get out to you later today.
All right. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good holiday.